We discuss another Oregon football transfer. And his name is Peyton Woodyard. Did you guys see this? They got the Alabama safety,
That's
Peyton
right.
Woodyard. Now, you may be like, he played at Alabama. Well, actually, no, he didn't.
I was going to say, was he an Oklahoma guy first?
I don't know.
I think he might have committed to them initially. But anyways, continue.
Well, no, he committed and enrolled at Alabama.
But just never played?
Well, he's a freshman. He's a 2024 recruit. So he's not. So when we think of transfers,
you think of guys who have played and are going to change schools.
Correct. He's not. He just left because Nick Saban left.
Gotcha.
He committed to Saban. He enrolled early. He was there practicing with the team
to play this year with Saban. He's like, oh wait, the coach is gone. I'm gone.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
And then he reopened his recruitment, and Oregon got him. But according to we have Andrew Nemec knows all these guys and knows the stuff. He says this kid's great, and that makes now. And then they got the Michigan State kid while you were away, the Derek
defensive tackle, right?
Yeah, Derek Harmon. I guess he's really good. Don't know, but I guess he is. And so now you're looking at 14 transfers from 14 schools for Oregon. Their transfer class now is up to number 2 in the nation.
That I saw. 2 in the country now.
Yeah, behind. Do you know who's number 1? Did you see who's number 1?
I did not.
Okay.
Lane Kiffin.
Ole Miss?
Ole Miss.
What an exciting time.
Yeah, they're number 1. So this is just transfer class. So I guess we have 2 different lists now, right? We have recruiting class and transfer class, I think.
I would imagine, because I don't think those seasons always go hand in hand. I think they happen at different times during the calendar year.
Yeah, so Ole Miss got 19 transfers, 7 4-stars and a 5-star. They're number 1. Oregon has 14 transfers, 6 4-stars and a 5-star. The 5-star is the wide receiver from A&M, Evan Stewart. Texas A&M is 3rd. They have 27 transfers, 8 4-stars, no 5-stars. Then it goes Alabama and Texas.
It's interesting. Are there star ratings? Do we know? Are they based on what they've done in college or just what they were as recruits?
I believe it. Again, a lot of this stuff is new.
Because I'm like, Dylan Gabriel was like A1 in the transfer portal as far as quarterbacks people wanted, or close to it. I would have thought he would have been maybe a 5-star, or even Jabbar Muhammad, who was an excellent shutdown corner from Washington. I don't know how they rate these guys in the transfer portal, but I love that Oregon has guys that we know can play at a really high level, and we've already seen it.
Yeah. Well, that leads to the question. What gets your sports pants tighter? Your school's recruiting class or your school's transfer class?
Probably the transfer class.
Because I feel like the transfer classes are way more interesting. Like you said, at least some of them are known commodities.
Well, yeah, in most cases, they're more proven. You know what to... You've seen something from these guys at this level and not just high school tape.
A little bit more like free agency in a way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's like getting more excited about free agency than your draft pick.
But I assume that when they say, like 4 stars, 5 stars when talking about transfers, I assume that just means what they were when they were initially recruited.
Probably.
But that may be a wrong assumption. I don't know. But I got to tell you, man, we talked about this Friday a little bit with Bartu, and he's on board with this. Part of me is a little hesitant to really get over my skis here, but I think what I think. And I just think Oregon is entering a championship window. And I think Dan Lanning is building a machine, man. He is building a machine. They got 11 kids from California. Transfers or freshmen, 11 kids. They are owning California. They should set up a satellite campus down there and just start picking them off. It's just, and I think it used to be with Oregon, it used to be that as good as they were, and it's been a long build here. I mean, gosh, you go all the way back to Rich Brooks. I mean, that's like, you're talking 30 years. As good as they were, you knew Oregon football. Deep down, you knew they were lacking in a few major areas, typically talent-wise. They didn't have the big boys up front, and they didn't have the depth. And you knew they weren't quite good enough. Close, but not quite there. Not sure you can say that now, man. With the depth and talent, and Bartu agrees with this, they fit the profile of a national championship contender, and he studies all this stuff. They have talent and depth up and down the roster at the highest level. So you still got to coach, you still got to develop, you still have to stay healthy, all those things. But they've never been better. I don't think they've ever had, and they played in 2 national championship games, and I don't think they've ever had better coaches with better talent.
And they may have had some better luck those seasons, and luck is going to be a factor too in just having things bounce your way. But they've never had it lined up like this. I agree with you. I think that they, in the Chip Kelly era, they had their offense taking people by storm and really surprising people when they went on to meet Auburn. But everyone knew to a man they didn't have the dudes against Auburn. They were tied with a couple minutes left in the fourth quarter, and they were almost able to get it done.
Yeah.
But that team wasn't nearly as well equipped as this year's Oregon Ducks team is going to be. And even the team that had Marcus Mariota and took on Ohio State, they didn't have the depth in the dudes. They hung around long enough, but I think you have a roster now that can finish the job if things break right.
I think that's right. And it's interesting because it's like you could say, well, if they win the Alabama game, which they were close to doing, the Auburn game, then that shows that they've been in a championship window the whole time. And maybe you could say that. It's semantics. Maybe they have been. When you play in when you get to 2 championship games in 10 years, I feel like it's hard to say that you can't win a title. You of course you can. You've gotten to 2 championship games.
But if we're being honest, those Oregon teams looked different than the teams that won those championships those years.
I agree. But
And in between.
They still almost beat Auburn.
They almost did it. They almost pulled it off, but that would have felt more like an underdog story. And if this happens with this roster, it feels more like that was something that should have happened.
Yes, I agree. And it's sort of, it ratchets up expectations too. But in that Auburn game, the one guy that was the difference was Nick Fairley, and you couldn't block him. And that's the guy you're talking about. That's the guy that you lacked. That's the guy that you just would never have that guy. So again, this is a team, Oregon is a team that is elite. They finished top 15 in 4 of the last 5 years. So they've been knocking on the door. But Dan Lanning, man, he looks poised to kick that thing down. And the other thing you love is that Lanning won't be poached. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be here for a while. And you know that this isn't really a one-off class. That dude is a hammer recruiter.
No, he's building depth on depth on depth.
He's a hammer. I mean, he is not going to suddenly stop getting kids. So if it doesn't work this cycle, next cycle, and he stays long enough, man, they're in a window, and it's exciting. It's got to be exciting for Duck fans. Now, a couple of things that came up last week when we were talking with Dave, points of concern. Well, one is you got a young coach who's still learning. He's made some mistakes in some big games. No question. 2, Bartu pointed to the coordinator positions. And with Tosh Lapoy at defensive coordinator, I mean, Tosh Lapoy won 2 titles during his time at Alabama. He's a great recruiter. He has the energy, but he's only been a defensive coordinator for 1 or 2 years. But then again, to offset that, you look at Lanning and say he was the best defensive coordinator in the nation and won a title in that role. So if an upgrade would be needed at any point, Lanning has the resources to get it done, and that's, quite frankly, why he's here and why he's staying put. So exciting times for Oregon football. You guys just, I mean, and I know it's weird, all the transfer and NIL stuff. College football has changed. But of all the schools poised to be right in the thick of it, Oregon is now one of them. They are not on the fringes of that. They are in the middle of that.
They're going to be a team that starts getting picked at the start of the season as opposed to a half or 2/3 of the way through the season.
I think that's right. And like you look at Kiffin, you look at Sark, look at Lanning, Kirby Smart. It's interesting to me that all the really good recruiters are now even better because they're getting above board support financially, NIL and the like, right? Like these guys were all good recruiters before, but now that it's all sort of above board and it's kind of anything goes, you can see the schools that are best poised to win. And I think it's the ones like Oregon that have not only the commitment and the resources, and I'm not saying they're on par with Texas resource-wise, far from it, but they have the commitment. and that's also matched with a coach who's a hammer recruiter. Same with Ole Miss. Same with Sark at Texas. You can't argue with their resources. And, you would say same with Lincoln Riley at USC, but
that's a little more complicated, isn't
it?
it?
I guess that remains to be seen. But you know who they are. It's just
sure.
It's a fun time. So Oregon is now second in terms of transfer class, and then looking at their overall class, they're number 3. Oregon and this is overall class. Now I assume this means just high school kids, not transfers. So they're number 2 in the transfer portal. They're number 3 overall, behind Georgia and Alabama.
That would have been my guess.
But they didn't used to be this high. They used to be down in,
No, and you'd find yourself
Cristobal.
behind the Clemsons, the LSUs, the Oklahomas. You're behind
Correct.
all those, the USCs.
Yeah, the best they would do is maybe sneak into the top 10, but sit in that 15 to 25 range. Now, they're top 10, top 5. It's nuts. But with that comes expectations. I mean, I think they're at the point now, and this is a whole nother discussion, where you got to win one.
And it's tough. It is tougher being the hunted than it is being the surprise team.
No question. And the one other thing that I forgot to ask Dave this. Next time he's in, we'll ask him what he thinks of this. But Joey Harrington and Suke and I have all gone round and round about this, and I contend and maintain that it is going to be tougher, top to bottom, in the Big Ten.
I think that's right.
Joey doesn't think it is. He thinks that's the same. And so
I think your bottom feeders are better, which
I agree.
Creates more problems.
Yes, I think you can get clipped in a game that you're favored by double digits easier in the Big Ten than the Pac-12.
Like you want to go to Purdue for an 11 a.m. kickoff, like in the middle of November when the ground is frozen. You could lose that game.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but their schedule sets up really well for next year. But the Big Ten's going to be mean.